Okay, topic 11.2. Today we're going to be working with multiplying fractions. In class, we have already learned how to multiply a fraction by a whole number, and so we're moving on to multiplying fractions by fractions. And so I want to go ahead and start off by telling you that multiplying fractions is very different from adding and subtracting fractions. If you'll remember, when you add or subtract fractions, you have to have a common denominator before you can add them together or take any parts away. Multiplying is very different. I like to call it probably one of the easiest things that we do with fractions, because all you do is you multiply the numerator and then you multiply the denominator. So in this particular problem, I would do 3 times 7 is 21, 4 times 8 is 32. And I look at that problem, I'm finished, but I always have to stop at the end of the problem and say, can that be reduced? And there are no factors that 21 and 32 have in common. So that is my final answer on this problem. Very simply, once again, all I did was multiply 3 times 7, 4 times 8. And there is my product. Okay, I don't want you to get concerned when you see 3 numbers. Here we have 2 fractions multiplied by a whole number. We're just going to take it one step at a time. Let's do the 3/4 times 1/4 first. And our answer, 3 times 1 is 3, 4 times 4 is 16. Now, take your 3/16 and multiply it by a whole number. And remember how we learned to do this. That 2 is really 2 over 1. That equals 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 16 times 1 is 16. These are both even numbers, so I know I'm not finished. These are both divisible by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 16 divided by 2 is 8. Now, I want to show you one of my favorite tricks for kind of cutting out some of the work when you get to this point right here. If I want to get to where maybe I don't have to reduce when I'm done, I can reduce over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to erase what I've already done and show you another way that we can do this. When you multiply fractions, you can do what we call cross-canceling. And by cross-canceling, what I mean is you look at the opposite numbers, so the numerator in one and the denominator in the other. If they have a common factor, you can go ahead and reduce those down. 2 and 16 both have a common factor 2. So I'm going to go ahead and just reduce both of those by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So my new problem is 3/8 times 1. And my answer is 3/8. Now, when you think about it, is that the answer that we had before? We had 3/16 times 2 over 1, which gave us 6/16. When we divided both of those by 2, we ended up with 3/8. Whoops. So you see, this was a quicker way to get there. And this is a way that I think is really, really helpful for students, because it almost keeps you from being able to stop working on a problem before you should and miss it because you haven't simplified it as low as it could possibly go. Okay? Now, this is one where obviously we always do parentheses first. 2/3 minus 1/3 we know is 1/3. 2 minus 1 is 1. The denominators are the same. So the new problem is 1/3 times 5/8. So with the trick I just showed you, I'm going to look at the opposites and see if they have anything in common. And this particular problem doesn't. That tells me that when I multiply, it's already going to be in lowest terms. 5/24. There's nothing that goes into 5 that also goes into 24. 1 times 5 is 5. 3 times 8 is 24. So that was a quick one. Here's the shortcut that I was telling you about. I couldn't wait to tell you till this slide because I think it's really helpful. When I look at 7 and 3, there's nothing they have in common. But when I look at 2 and 8, they have 2 in common. Let's divide them both by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now let's work it. 7 times 1 is 7. 4 times 3 is 12. just to show you that this works, I'm going to rewrite the problem like it was originally, 7/8 times 2/3. Now, if I don't do any of my canceling, I have 7 times 2 is 14, 8 times 3 is 24. Those are both even, so I know I'm not done. 2 goes into both of those. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 24 divided by 2 is 12. So you see, this is just a really, really quick way to get to your final answer. Okay? Now, on a problem like this, there are no parentheses, so let's just take it in the order in which it comes. We have 1/3 times 1/4. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 4 is 12. So let's bring that down and multiply it times the last factor, 1/12 times 2/3. Nothing in common here, but here they have 2 in common. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Now let's multiply. 1 times 1 is 1. 6 times 3 is 18. So 1/3 times 1/4 times 2/3 equals 1/18. Now let's go back up. I want to erase this. Let's go back up and see, could we have gone ahead and cross-canceled here? Yes. 2 and 4. Make that a 1 because 2 divided by 2, and then 4 divided by 2 is 2. So now we have 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1, over 3 times 2 is 6 times 3 is 18, which was the same answer we got when we broke it down. We just didn't have to do as much work right there. Okay, gosh, that was really fast. Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3 are just 3 problems that I want you to work for me. In each problem, I have made it where you can cross-cancel. I want to see that you know how to cross-cancel. If you cross-cancel, you should not have to reduce when you're finished. You should have your final answer already there when you cross-cancel. Okay? So come to class tomorrow. If you have any questions, we'll get ready to go over those and work on problems like these during class. Have a good evening.